Hi, everybody. We are joined today by Chef Marcus Samuelsson. He is the chef and owner of Red Rooster in Harlem, in New York City, the winner of Top Chef Masters, and the author of Yes Chef, a memoir chronicling his extraordinary journey from Ethiopia to Sweden to Harlem, with many stops along the way, including the White House. There's a line in Yes
And the Google office.
And the Google office, most importantly,
yes.
on 14th Street. There is a line in Yes Chef that struck me that I just wanted to read. Who's going to make the people realize that food dismissed as ethnic by the fine dining world could be produced at the same level as their sacred bouillabaisse and velouté? And I have to say, after reading Yes Chef, I think the answer is Chef Marcus Samuelsson. So please join me in welcoming to Google New York, Marcus Samuelsson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be back. I've been here twice. One time for the launch of the African book, The Soul of a New Cuisine, and one time with Martha Stewart for a Christmas thing that you guys were doing.
And this is the best time. Third time's the best, right?
It is by far.
You haven't been.
By far.
So I have to admit, I read your book, and reading it made me feel like possibly the laziest human being on the planet, because you have done everything and worked so hard throughout your career, your quite long career at this point, because you started quite young. And I can't even imagine, you're only 41 now, which is very young by my standards, because I'm not quite 40 yet. And I can't even imagine what you're going to do in the next 10 or 20 years. So what made this moment the right moment, in your opinion, to write a memoir?
Well, I think that there's an evolution, right, as a self and as a chef. And I always actually envisioned to be a good chef by 42 or something like that, because I think that's a perfect age of you in terms of you know who you are. And being a chef, so much about it is knowing who you are. And you can express that through food. But also where I was in my life, you know, married, I knew about my Ethiopian side. I also knew where in the DNA in terms of my restaurant, where do I need to be? Where was it important for me to be besides just having a store? And all of that takes time. It takes time to become a good chef. Not that many becomes good chefs. And then you have to find that conscious of finding yourself. And then where do you need to operate from? You know, I became chef very early, maybe too early, but then also hadn't asked myself those questions of, is there something larger? Can I be part of changing the footprint in this city? What's going on with the food chasm in this specific city in this country? What are my responsibilities?
That's great. Well, you know, the book is so beautifully written, and just starting with the first chapter, I have to admit it actually almost brought me to tears reading about the story about your mother, and having never seen a picture of your birth mother, and that vignette was really a very powerful story, and one that I think probably a lot of people didn't know about you, and if they know some parts of your life. When you read the final manuscript, was there a story or an event that struck you as particularly poignant and important to write about?
Well, I think, you know, I wanted to keep a book that has the pace of myself. I mean, the chapters are pretty short, so it's a fast, good pace. It's a quick read. If you're an immigrant like me, it might take 2 weeks, but someone like you that's been here longer, maybe 2 days. You know, I wanted to keep a quick read and also have people from all walks of life share it at a dinner table. If you were 17 and was into cooking, you could read this book and relate to it. If you were the parent, you could like sort of see yourself in your journeys and your struggles. And if you were the grandparent, there was this sort of, you know, that's what we do with our kids. We inspire them to cook. So keeping the pace, but also keeping it an entry level to all people. You know, for me, it's important to explain the journey in terms of profession. Specifically, you know, chefing is so different today than it was when I came in, right? It was one way. You worked in a French restaurant and you worked yourself, you know, as hard as possible, and the only way to respond was yes, chef. But just as much as your business have evolved, ours too. So now people might know about cooking through Top Chef or through an online recipe. And what happened? What was the difference? I wanted to explain that sort of that journey. And also explain for people from all colors a window in to how a black laborer's journey is, because it is different. Just like a woman's journey is different. And guys can always say, like, no, it doesn't matter, there's no difference. We all open. It is different. And it's not about and offer a conversation about race that wasn't polarizing. That was like, you know what, I've never thought about that. And from all sides of it, say like, you know what, I've never thought about that journey.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because you do talk a lot about race in the book, and it's a really fascinating perspective, being one of really the only executive chefs of color in the city. Maybe Chef Cardoz stands up, and there's a handful in sort of the fine dining arena that you've really made a mark for yourself. And you write a lot about the racism that you faced along the way in your career, some of the really off-color comments that were made to you by quite prominent chefs that were really disturbing to me and made me not want to watch certain programs ever again. It's just, there's been a lot of challenges that you've faced. And what about those experiences sort of influence the way you run your business now?
Well, I think that I've been lucky enough to work in really great restaurants, and that taught me of what to do, but it also taught me what not to do. More than anything, if I walked into any great French restaurant that I worked in, there was no women, zero. It was, the narrative of the black chef didn't exist, to the point where you had to explain for them that you were there working in the kitchen many, many, many times. And even when I got the job, they didn't have the job because it was a black chef. So that does two things. That either makes you sharper or quit. And a lot of people quit. And there lies the answer why you don't have a more diverse entry level in the workforce. And cooking is just one thing. I mean, you can say the same in the tech world. You can say the same in, I mean, the book is a mirror up to look, to introvert yourself, look and self, you know what? How does that reflect my environment? You know? And I mean, the fact that there's not enough women in the cooking world is just nonsense, because the most influential people in cooking have always been women.
Sure.
You can look at it from just eating around the world, but then you can also look at it from, in this country, who changed the game. You know, Alice Waters and Julia Childs. We wouldn't have food TV without Julia. We wouldn't think, we have 54 farmers markets in New York City. Without Alice asking that question, maybe we would have 2. So on the larger scale, who are the biggest game changers? Women. And just that cooking in terms of a restaurant, in terms of fine dining, which is one segment of this conversation, could be argued that is more suitable for a guy. It's almost like an Olympic. You run really, really fast. But that it does not explain who contributes to our community and changes how we eat. Right. Fine dining cooking is the minority in this pyramid that we call food community.
Well, talking about your journey some more, I mean, you've had, excuse me, I sort of alluded to this in the introduction, many, many stops along this journey, and I would love to hear more about that journey, including your time almost becoming a professional soccer player to cooking for the White House, and some of the kind of the key moments that stand out for you. If you can just tell us a bit about
Well,
that.
for me, one of the key moments ever is where I was allowed to work for free for a year. When I got the chance to work in France.
We would hire you here for that too, if you want to work for free for a year. Just kidding.
Well, you know, it would be a good education for both, I'll tell you that. We'll be closer to the gap of the food chasm, I'll tell you that. I would ask a lot of questions, and you guys are smarter than me, so you would fix it.
We would just Google it.
Yeah, exactly. No, but so that chance of working in a 3-star Michelin restaurant in France was, so for me, a big success, because I sent out 35 letters. Me and my mother went to the local library to send out a lot of letters, and we got, just like I think the undertone in the book should be about rejections. How do you deal with rejections? All of us here have been rejected, and how do you deal with that? It's in the personal life, happens at workplace, and what do you do with that? And for me, it was actually the perfect time. You know, I started to write to 3-star Michelin restaurants when I was 18, 19, 20, but I didn't get there until I was 23. But it actually turned out to be better for me because I was a better cook. Although each one of those answers back were painful. But in the meantime, I taught myself French, and I was a better cook. So the rejection does not always have to be that you have to get off your journey. It might just, you know, I went to Switzerland instead of France, and they spoke French in Switzerland. And German. So now I got yelled in Swedish, German, and French, which was a good advantage, because before I went to France, I needed to know some of that. So it's being committed to the craft, being completely in love with your craft. If I wouldn't have I would have doubted that. There's no way I would have taken that abuse or those things. And I'm also now thinking about, is there a way to create incredible food without abuse?
What's the answer?
Well, we're searching. Because there is a commitment inside that you can't doubt that has to happen.
Right.
And I think Red Roosters ask me a lot of questions, and I have to answer them. I always trust my work, and I see new questions in my work. And I've been lucky enough on the book tour to travel to some of the best restaurants in the country, and I ask, I get a window into what's going on in American food, and it's a better place today. It's more diverse. Whether you eat in a Chinese Muslim restaurant in San Francisco, or you eat at a good Tex-Mex restaurant in Austin, or you eat in a really cool, great, fun environment in Miami, or you eat in Copa in Boston. The kitchens are more diverse. They are the evolution is completely different. I'm so happy that that's happening, and I think America is one of the few places that can actually create that, because the entry level still to work in a kitchen is pretty low, but your curiosity level is very high. So people come from all walks of life, which is great. I worked in the tech world, but now I want to become a chef. Look at what Nate's doing in Seattle. Look at what that modern cuisine is happening there. That will answer a lot of questions, not just on the modern American cuisine today, but those guys are so bright, so they will probably figure out maybe they have the question to end famine. Because that's how that modernist cuisine is one part of what they're working on, but then they're also working on these other things, and that's so great where cooks are coming into this industry, not just on the way I got in. That's one way, but it's so great to have people like Nate and other people in the conversation, because they're going to ask themselves questions. How can we figure out better against diabetes, allergies, and these big questions that we have? That I found it's the importance of chef. We have to, filling restaurants, that's part of our job, and we should be doing that, especially if you have a big platform. You should be doing that.
Right, but driving the larger conversation about food and
absolutely.
health.
And that's what we do. I mean, my company, I'm committed to that. That's why we have a community arm that is very strong, and we do cooking classes for free in the community. That's why we have a tech side that is very strong.
Tell us about the tech side. What are you doing?
Well, I just felt with ms.com and foodrepublic.com, I wanted, what I saw online didn't sort of match with, the food conversation I saw online didn't necessarily match with why I got into the industry. I got into the industry about curiosity, and I wanted to learn. So I felt, what's the opportunity there? Well, with Food Republic, we focused on making a food platform that is geared towards men. So we have about 55%, 45% men, women. That is women friendly, but that you learn something, and we celebrate each other as chefs. So that was a space that was open, so we built a platform around it. On ms.com, we have about 70-30 women to men, and there we might focus on, it's very community oriented to Harlem, so you have sort of a map into Harlem, but also what food healthy after yoga or after you've been working out. So this, adding something to the web space that was about learning and feeding people curiosity and become better cooks and become smarter shoppers in terms of the food space.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you're using the platform that you've been given or that you've really created for yourself between things like Top Chef and your James Beard Awards and all the rest of it to really become an activist in the food movement. And maybe people don't know that much about that. So it's interesting that it's great that you're doing that.
No, but you have to. These wonderful platforms that you guys are part of creating, evolving, are there for us as consumers, right? So when I opened Red Rooster and I had doubt, I went to Twitter right away. I was like, should I vintage plates or new plates? And right away, vintage comes in, right? Should I do my Jamaican oxtail or grandma's oxtail? Right away. And it's a fun way of engaging and allowing people all over the world to participate and feeling close to this narrative, this conversation. It's not about self-promotion. That's get tired. So I use Twitter I curate carefully. about the food conversation I want to have, and what I see, because I know I'm lucky to be in Austin one day and Harlem the next week, and then maybe, at a food market somewhere else, right? So, but I know that the people that hang out with me online, they want to be part of that. So I think I have to curate. I can't just post anything,
Well,
like curation, sifting, and making a yummy, sticky space for the people that want to engage.
It's interesting how you've used social media to influence the evolution of Red Rooster. I think that's very unusual because usually chefs come in and they have such a clear idea of what they want to do, and the personalities of the chefs that I've met tend to be very controlling for the most part, not in a bad way, but and so it's amazing that you've been able to engage in that dialogue and actually have it influence your menu and influence the choices that you're making in a really...
Well, I mean, for me with Red Rooster, I didn't grow up in Harlem, so I can't say that I grew up there, but I wanted to create a restaurant that was a mirror image, food-wise, of that community. And some people, depending on where you live or where you grew up, know more or less about that community. It's a mystique, it's a known neighborhood, but maybe everyone doesn't know about what it really is. And I felt, well, I've lived there for 10 years. I want to map that out on a menu. I want you to taste Harlem. Well, there's obviously a center of an African American heritage there that we should honor. There's also El Barrio, and on top of El Barrio, there's a new Mexican community. Therefore, the taquitos. There's also the Italian corridor, like it's been there forever. And then you have this new West African, because, yes, they're black African Americans, but the West Africans has another new ingredients that we might not know about. So that's why we have shrimp powder on the restaurant, on the menu. So when you read the menu of Red Rooster, it's curated and crafted based on seasonality, but also based on Harlem. You see Harlem. And that's our job there.
It's amazing. Well, getting back to the book quickly, you were pretty much an open book throughout the process and really went pretty raw and told a lot of details and very personal, deeply personal things. I think if you're going to write a book like that, obviously you need to be prepared to do that. Was there anything that you wish you had left out or a story that you wish you had actually included?
I mean, the process of writing this book was over 5 years, 3 days a week. I just woke up really early and wrote to my editor and my co-writer, Veronica. And I mean, we had to narrow it down to 300 something pages, and it's like 1,500 pages, something like that. But so there's a lot of stories, obviously, a lot of moments that didn't get in there. But, this book, like anything, was bad for a long time before it got good. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and how does this stuff, that's when Andy came in and really edited this well. And how do I tell these stories? And I felt that it was really about being honest and not protect. I knew I walked in, I knew I didn't want to do a victory lap. It's so male and so tired. And I knew also that I wanted, if I'm going to borrow time from the reader, borrow their time. There's a lot of stuff they can do. They needed to get me know me better. Like I've read books about known people that you know less about them after spent, like for me, 2 weeks because I read slow, and I'm pissed after that. So you have to get to know me better than before, right? And also learn something about yourself. I want this book to be a sense of a mirror to yourself. It's like, what are we doing in that space? Are we hiring from this community? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a project right across the street here. How many of those people work for Google? Like questions. What can we do about that? How can we engage in that community? What responsibility do we have when we buy this building? Who's that great for? It's great for a lot of people. Could be greater for even more. What can we do to engage? Questions.
No, you're absolutely right. You raise good questions.
Mm-hmm. That's why we should hang out a year together.
Or let's hang out anytime you want. I'm on it.
Yeah.
I'll see you tomorrow. One of the things that you talk about in the book is the failure of Mercato 55, which I actually had the pleasure of dining at before it opened, and that makes me sound like an insider. It was for an event that you were doing, and I had the honor of dining at your restaurant before it closed. And that was, you sort of highlighted that as one of your biggest professional disappointments, but then that was quickly followed by, well, at least in the book, it was quickly followed by Top Chef Masters cooking for the White House State Dinner. I'm curious what that failure taught you, what the failure of Mercato 55 sort of brought out on you.
It taught me a lot. I mean, there's no way Rooster would have been as delicious and yummy without that failure, right?
Why do you say that?
Well, because you learn so much. I mean, you guys learn so much. You guys launch products all the time.
That fails.
That fails miserably, and this is the smartest, the brightest. But I know that you guys are sitting in war rooms and saying, why did it fail? It can't fail. We got to do better, and you come back at it, right? And so I think, for me, I learned about the conversation about African fine dining is not wrong. That is not wrong. I should have learned more about the community. When you're in the meat packing, there is nobody in the world walk there on a Thursday at 9:30 that wants to have a kumbaya African experience. They want to stand on table, do shots, and have a good ass time. Well, let them have it. It should not be Africa and good food. Shouldn't be dragged down to that misery. And shame on me for thinking that they were even on the same conversation. I think it's great that all that stuff is there, and it has an incredible bridge and tunnel feel, which a bridge and tunnel should have, and that has nothing to do with Haile Selassie. I should have kept the two out of the way. So that's the quick answer, right? And then, it's also what else did we teach about myself? Actually, it was 2006 when we signed the lease, and when you're in this bubble of bigger, better, that rent was about $100,000 a month. We're a restaurant.
Wow.
And I was so wanted to do it. It's like, no problem, we'll just pack it. And then you become chasing rent. So that informed my decision about doing something that I would not be chasing. Committed still to chase flavor, not chasing rent. So it taught me so many things. So again, the purity of the project wasn't wrong. It was my head wasn't clear and I wanted to do it too bad. So two things was good about it. We quit before it got bad. And I learned on how to listen and walk in neighborhoods more. And that's why I walked around in Harlem before I engaged. Right. So hindsight, it all worked out. But it took me a lot of self sort of learning, and it's like, okay. And it's good you get humble and you listen and you get better. Yeah. Or you don't, and then there's another path.
Yeah. Well, in the book, you bring a lot of taste so much to life, and I'm wondering if there's a cookbook in the works for Yes Chef, sort of like a journey of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people have asked this and maybe it's called No Chef. I don't know. I don't know. But I struggle with this a lot. About I've never done anything where there wasn't food. I'm like, I know it's a memoir, but how many recipes we're gonna have? And then it's like, none. The editor's like, none. Like, whoa. I was nervous about how to engage with an audience without food, and not stand on it in any way. Even when I speak, I always bring up food terms. So that was the first for me, and I think I don't even think about what's next in terms of writing things in terms of Yes Chef right now, because I just feel like we're in the middle of it. It's been a great run, and we have now it's sort of the product what comes out of it. I don't know. We'll see. Cool. But it's an interesting idea. Yes. Chef.
I will take a percentage. There was a great article just over the weekend in the Times,
yeah.
sort of, leading up to this event, I'm sure, about building your, obviously.
I love that.
Right? About building your brand and sort of the empire that is Marcus Samuelsson. So can you talk to us a little bit about the brand of Marcus Samuelsson and the pressure of that and sort of how that's all going and what's...
Well, I don't think any of that is... I get annoyed when you're like a known person with a platform and you talk about the pressure. Pressure is being outside looking in. Pressure is, how am I going to pay my rent? That's pressure. How am I going to provide for my family? Anyone with a platform that has option on what to do and how to curate it great, lucky. Yeah. You're lucky and you're privileged. And that's what my sort of obsessiveness with curation for the audience is, right? Because I know that if we don't take care of that, lights out very quickly. So I never look at it as pressure. I look at it as we have to be gooder than the rest, and there has to be a narrative, because the people that take time out and spend money with us deserves it. And I think about everything that we touch on that level. And it can never be a false promise. And if we're a $2 cornbread, it should feel like a $28 cornbread. And the reality is
$28 cornbread?
Well,
what are you eating? Where?
truffles.
Yeah.
Truffles.
Fair enough.
No, and the reality is that I live in a community where most of those great, grand experiences and amenities are south of that community. And I resent that. And I'm not going to walk around angry, walking around, this is wrong, this is wrong. It's not going to happen. I'm going to provide it in my community first. So when you do that trip, when you come with that beautiful bag, that changes your narrative of Uptown. And commercialism is very fast. It's now changed real estate. It now changed job creation. So it will happen. And it can be cornbread at a time, if it's curated, if it's done really sticky, yummy, and delicious.
And
that's what I think.
$28.
And then you think about the brand. Well, the brand that's the brand, right? It's aspirational. It's inclusive versus exclusive. And of course, it's easier when you're a Swediopian living in Harlem to think about those, because I think about my grandmother from Sweden or my sisters and brothers in Africa. They're in my conversation, and I think about the chef that I grew up with, because it's encompasses an inclusiveness that other might or might not been exposed to.
Well, I want to open it up to questions for in a couple of minutes, because I know there's a lot of
No, you don't. You're a good interviewer. This is all you. This is all
Thank
you.
you. I'm the Indian Oprah up here. I just want to do a couple of finish this sentence for me, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Oh, wow.
So if people can get ready to ask their questions at one of the two mics, because we are recording for YouTube, that would be great. So if you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Swedish food is?
Salty, pickle, delicious.
Fusion cooking is?
Can be confusing, but it's also eye-opener, because it's cross, right? Essentially cross. I think there's a new word that I think we're going to look at fusion the way we look at a fax machine or a VCR. It was a moment, but there's definitely a better product coming out of that.
What's a better word for it?
I don't know if I have a good word for it, but I do think that it's sort of like it encompasses ethnic somewhere, right? And cross. Fusion, it comes from music and jazz, and sometimes a food word got to come and be in and of the foods. That's why when you work with foods like food deserts, it doesn't work, because there's not a desert in those places. Like, it's got to come in and of. That's why but that's why I focus more on foodcasm, because really it's choices that we deliberately made that certain people should be in on food and good options, and certain people should not. It's not a desert, it's a decision.
I like it. Junk food is?
When I was a kid, it was aspirational, because I never got it. Never. So it's like this thing over here, right? But it's still, as bad as it is, it also inspires us for a lot to do. Like when we have fun, we think about something, we use words as, we go there, we think about fast casual, we think about burger, but we do our version. We think about fries, but we do our version. So it can be fast, it can be delicious. It depends on who makes it, right? It's like the author, it's like the chef. So I suck at this thing, by the way.
No, you're great at it. It's good.
Yeah.
Food bloggers are?
Well, we are now, we hire and we work with the tribe. So it took me a long time to understand that whole thing. A long time. I like it now. It took me a long time. We joined.
My favorite thing about Harlem is?
Oh, the people. Easy. It's the closest thing to Africa. It's the best thing of life. It's like I always say, it's like a Polaroid picture. It's like, oh, there it is, like this. It's imperfect, it's perfect. It's great.
I like it.
It's good. Good part of town. where Google
Reality.
should have an office.
What's that?
Where Google should have an office.
Or uptown.
I'm a complete believer that tech should be uptown, young people, a lot of space, open-minded, and it would completely change Northern Manhattan.
Well, I think there's a lot of movement towards sort of a tech center, an entrepreneurial center in the Bronx.
It's great.
Yeah. Reality chef competitions are.
Fun, exhausting, and I love the fact that it gets the family involved. So many times when you have like kids and the parents come like, I'll tell you a funny thing, like I did a cooking class in Harlem, and this kid came up to me and I was doing a salad between chicken and some cheese. And he said, "Chef, is that ricotta?" And he's 13 years old. I was like, "Yeah, how do you know that?" He's like, "I'm watching Chopped, you know?" And like the window in that, like the fact that, whoa, I had no idea about the difference between ricotta or burrata when I was 13 years old. So it can be that. And if it is the window into for us to eat better or learn, have another conversation about food, fantastic. It can also be very similar to sports, right? We watch more sports, doesn't mean that we are healthier. So it really depends. It really depends how you do
I
it.
think many American men watching football on Saturday or Sunday rather would disagree with that. I think they're very healthy. My husband being one of them, just watching the football.
Yeah.
I told him he's not actually on the team, but he doesn't agree with me at all.
Yeah. No, well, in his mind at that moment, he is.
Yeah, he's on the team. He's the coach.
Yeah.
Home is?
Harlem, uptown.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Any questions?
Yeah, we have
some
questions.
waiting up there.
I like it.
Before I get to my question, can I add one thing to your do not ever say again list? Tech is for young.
You're right. You're right.
Oh, wait, that's
a
true.
very, that is, you're right. Shame on me.
You're being
I came late to the
schooled.
game though.
Another learning.
Yeah.
I have a nephew who's been enthusiastic about food since he was 4. I mean, we gave him espresso cups as a birthday present when he was 4, and he was already working on his knife skills then.
What could possibly go wrong?
And he's just finishing up his first year at Johnson & Wales in Providence.
Nice. Good choice.
But after a summer of doing nothing but making pico de gallo, he's really seriously thinking now about, maybe I want to be a food scientist working for a big corporation. Maybe this restaurant thing is not for me. I mean, might he be on the right track or might he be missing something? I mean, it's an incredibly tough lifestyle. It's an incredibly tough life. Is he blowing it off too soon, or is he maybe being wise that it's not for everybody?
Well, I think the good thing with him is he's asking himself important questions. And, where he is in that stage of who am I and what do I want, right? Today in cooking, you can be an incredible food scientist, and Johnson & Wales was a good part of that journey. When I was coming up, you could basically chef. That was one area to be chef. So, there's 20 entry levels today about cooking. And I think him finding this out, he's on his own path, his journey, is the answer. And the great thing is that he can do that. And then when he's 25, 26, maybe he wants to try a restaurant again. And then maybe he wants to solve how to make the best deep fried chicken, the healthiest in the world. And guess, he sits on the knowledge on both sides by then, right? So the path that he's on, I think, is more of what the common new chef's going to be like. It's not just one narrative of the guy that didn't like to go to school, became a chef. That was what my generation pretty much came out of. The next one's going to come in so many different levels, and he represents that. So his journey is his journey. I would never put tough or challenging around being a chef. I just don't think I see. When you truly, your craft that you picked it's tougher to do something you don't like. Because you'd rather work 15 hours a day with something that you love than 12 hours a day with something that you hate, right? That's really the math that you have to do. So, that's that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi. So
Take
going
that
back
mic
to
down a little bit. Come on.
taller person.
Yes.
So going back to the book, I read it. I thought it was so moving. It's clearly such a distinctly you story, but one that resonates with so many people. And I was so curious just to know what it was like to work with a writer on such a personal story, what
Yeah.
she brought to the party, and
Yeah, a lot.
how the process changed because of it.
Well, she brought spelling. How about that? Basic. After, I've lived in 6 countries and I can't spell in one language well. I can't. I mean, like, I keep this sort of a 12-year-old sort of, no, actually younger, a 9-year-old sort of vocabulary because I don't know how to spell those words I want to say. So she brought that. But I also had to be, I knew Veronica. I've known Veronica for a long time. So trust is everything, right? So Veronica is very thoughtful, and she knew the story I needed and wanted and was committed to tell. And I'm so privileged that Random House, and it was 3 years in a row when I had to go to Random House and say, hey, the book is not good. We got to wait a year. 3 years. And they supported it. And I was nervous taking that elevator up because so many times they could have just said, you know what, we're going to cancel the whole thing. But they supported it because there was a good story in there. And that, I was very grateful for that. And Veronica and Andy, the editor, constantly kept me, it's got to be storytelling, it's got to be a good story. And when it wasn't good, we 86'd it, we didn't put it. So working with her specifically was about trust. And she spent way too much time with me for her family. She came up, hung out with us in the kitchen. She made it work. I mean, she brought a daughter into the kitchen, her husband came, and I always constantly had to pay them with fried chicken. So, but we were committed, we're in a band, So much about doing this, and when you give is, you gotta be in. And if you're not, then you can't tell the story. So.
Excuse me. Any other questions?
Well, great.
I asked them all.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a privilege to get here.